You have to be well-rounded. You have to work on the soft skills with the new technology. That is the home run.
Welcome to the Business of AI in Healthcare podcast. Our mission is to discuss practical insights and share knowledge on how to navigate the transformative technology of AI. It is important to understand how AI can be used safely and ethically while revolutionizing patient care, streamlining operations, and enhancing medical research. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Kaiser. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app to ensure you don't miss any of the featured episodes. You can also join us online at thebusinessofAIinhealthcare.com. This episode of the Business of AI in Healthcare takes us virtually to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, LSU's home, and the office of Henry Hayes, CEO and co-founder of DisruptReady, a leading business intelligence firm specializing in AI. Henry is also nationally recognized as a keynote speaker on the topic of disruptive innovation. Welcome to the podcast, Henry.
Babaloo, it's great to be here with you, man. I'm excited for this discussion.
Well, Henry, we both serve as instructors at our local universities, me at the University of Texas, Dallas, and you at LSU. So I think it's safe to say that we're both as passionate about lifelong learning as we can be. And we both see the imminent changes taking place in the world of healthcare, and particularly the supercharged change taking place in AI. So who hasn't heard of it by now? Change is upon us, and we are being disrupted. So let's start there. Your company is named DisruptReady. How'd you come up with that?
We didn't spend a lot of time on that one, Bob. Look, bottom line is disruption is coming. Are you ready? And really what it does speak to is it speaks to the essence of why we do what we do. Because look, the big companies with a lot of money and a lot of chances to make mistakes and get this right, they'll be okay. I'm more worried about the mom and pop small businesses around America that, in my mind, fuel a lot of America, jobs, opportunity, etc. What about them? What about the ones who don't have those 2 and 3 and 4 chances to get it right? And so we're here to kind of splash a little cold water in everybody's face to say, it's coming, we've seen it, and it's coming a little bit faster than you think. Now, the good news in that is if you do move and tweak and iterate and come up with a plan, you'll be ahead of the big guys, because sometimes the big guys can't get out of their own way. It's hard to turn the Titanic on a dime. And so with great change comes a lot of really great opportunities. We really exist, Bob, to kind of do a lot of education around that. We do a lot of guidance, and then we build on everything I said in 1 and 2, meaning things like custom large language models that are built on the backs of some of the pre-trained models. And we can get into that. But at its essence, it's like, look, man, disruption it's not coming, it's here. How are you going to respond? And, you know, I'm fond of saying in the summer here, Bob, that, look, AI is the big dry match that has hit the dry piece of Texas kindling, meaning the fire just got a lot hotter and the speed has picked up immeasurably. So the time for theory and let's put it on the next quarter's agenda, those are over.
So Henry, I remember, I think we're both old enough to reminisce just a little bit about some of the changes that we've seen take place. I know you referred to, I think, Blockbuster, is that right?
Oh, it's a great story because A, we can all affiliate with it, and B, that's what happened to me. So in a very long story, very short, I was exiting a company that I had the privilege to help build in the pharmaceutical space. We had sold and the money was transferring. And at that time in my Baton Rouge, the Blockbuster video stores began to close. And that was such an altering sight. It's like a McDonald's or a Walmart closing, things that have been around in your life forever, and you just count on as being there. And so then it begged the question, what happened? And we know what happened to them. Netflix happened. But if you remember that in itself, Bob, Netflix was a little cute, fun little additive business player that once you got your head around it, you thought, well, that's cute, right? Maybe I'll try it. And then you snap your fingers and they're left standing and Blockbuster is not. So my intellectual curiosity led me to gravitate to a guy named Clayton Christensen at Harvard, who is basically thought of as the godfather of the term disruptive innovation, meaning you have new technology coming, which is faster than people think, and you match that with a new business model, and you have microwave disruption. And so when I learned the tenets of that, I was hooked. And I got bit by that bug, and that bug bite will stay with me as long as I'm on this earth, because, that was 13 years ago, meaning now it's faster. And this isn't slowing down for anyone. So it's just a fascinating macro business environment to be in. And like I said, it gives the little guys the chance to zoom up either with or past the big guys. And so I'm signed up for that.
Yeah, I've seen, like you mentioned, the Blockbuster thing, but this idea of Airbnb being the largest hotel in the world, and now rental cars, they take on a whole new form as well. There's different ways you can rent a car. When you think about disruption, should we be thinking defense, protect ourselves, or should we be thinking offense?
I love how you phrase that question, because there's one answer, and it's offense. Meaning, look, this is the time to learn to plot your own strategy and then make course corrections, because nobody gets it right the first time. Anytime somebody signs up with us, Bob, I send them a box of Band-Aids on purpose, because you will, and I want you to, have scars. That's the only way you learn in this environment. And it's a bit counterintuitive to the way that you and I grew up, which was, there are business books and there's mentorship and there's business cycles. And this is the way that the banking industry has operated for decades. And you kind of took that as gospel. Well, that's no longer the case. You mentioned Airbnb. Bob, the founders of that company on purpose had no experience in the hotel space. Why? Because both the boards of Hilton and Marriott quickly shot down the fact that somebody wanted to rent Bob's second bedroom. They said it would never happen. It was ridiculous, and they shot it down. And I think that's so interesting, because those aren't ridiculous and dumb people. Those are smart people with decades, if not centuries, of combined hotel success. And yet they could not get out of their own cognitive bias to see how other people would see that differently. And so what an eye-opening story that one is, where the most successful kind of hotel, quote unquote, in the world doesn't own a single hotel room, right? So more of that's on its way, and it's a sign for us all.
So Henry, when you go do a keynote presentation to a large audience, are they expecting to hear from you just about AI? What's the background of these folks? Are they all AI experts, or are they sitting there wanting to be enlightened to some degree about this whole concept of being disrupt ready?
My crowds typically, Bob, are the exact opposite. They have the guts and the courage to raise their hand and say, look, man, we don't even know what we don't know about AI. So we need you to come in and, in a simplistic way that doesn't need a master's degree in Python coding, walk us through what this is, where it comes from, how it generally works, and then probably most importantly, who's doing what with this in our industry. And I'll tell you this, days are over, Bob, where we say, okay, here's the theory. Now we're doing this podcast in the summer of 2024. There's not an industry that exists where either the incumbent is spending money in AI, and more dangerous, non-natives are coming to what I call the gates, and the barbarians at that gate do not look like the traditional executive players in that space, meaning those guys and gals are coming for margin. Healthcare is a great example of that, because when you take all the waste and all the traditional approaches that add up to, oh, that's just the way we've always done it, that is not how the non-incumbents see it. And they're testing a lot of market theses to say, we think we can get that market share for cheaper. And oh, by the way, we think the customers will enjoy it. And when that happens, you have industry flipping events. And that's happening right now. So most of my audience is in that group of, hey, I've been at this for 20, 30 years. I want to stay working, but I need to understand this change. And I'm smart enough to understand that it's serious. And I got to pay attention. So help me. That's my audience.
That's that intellectual curiosity you're talking about. And at some point in time, that kind of gets into your mind. You say, I need to do something about this. So for me personally, I've always been a technology person. I've always been interested in technology advances and change. And I've seen certain things come quicker and some come slower. I mean, when the internet started to evolve, we saw it go up. We saw the dot-com bust as well. And then we saw it steady out. But this whole AI thing, it's been coming very, very quickly. I was encouraged to go ahead and try to sharpen the saw, if you will, get my knowledge just a little bit keener. So I signed up for one of these 7-week courses at MIT. And I was one of 160 or so people from around the world that signed up for this course. And I was a little bit intimidated. I thought, all these people out there, they are going to be so smart. They're going to know all about the technology, this, that, and the other. But I'm going to try to hold my own. And I found out that probably 90% of the people there knew nothing about it. And these were medical doctors. These were research scientists. These are very well-educated, smart people, but they're absolutely curious about what is AI really going to be like? What's it going to be like today? What was it like in the past? What's it going to be like in the future? So it really is a lot about curiosity. So the question I have for you, what inspired you to actually embrace and start in AI? Is that where you started with your curiosity?
That's a great question, Bob. So back to that story I told a moment ago, when we were exiting the company that I helped build, I was heavily traveling to help build that company. So just like anybody else, I would be in airports picking up Harvard Business Review or Fast Times or Wired, the business journals of the day. And the technology always caught my eye, meaning it seemed like we were picking up a little quicker, but I didn't have the time to devote to that. So when I did have a little time and more resource, I said, I'm planting my flag here. And that's when I got bitten by the Clayton Christensen bug. And the idea, Bob, being we had what's called the Essential 8, which is the 8 technologies that we feel are misunderstood by the general public. They're quicker to get here than people think, and they are going to change everything. So AI was one of what we call the Essential 8. The others, the blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality, the Internet of Things, drones, 3D printing, etc. And so we felt that applying Christensen's principles, when these show up, they're going to show up, and they're not asking permission. It's like a cannonball in the shallow end. And so the question then became, what do we do with traditional executives that want to stick around, that want to stay ahead? And so when OpenAI launched GPT-3 in November of 22, we were on top of that. And we knew that the executives were going to need a guide, someone to hold their hand and say, look, we're going to get you across this river of fear in your mind, where you might put up a defense to say, you know what, I don't understand it. I'm not technically savvy. I'm going to throw my hands up. That's not a winning strategy. And so we exist to kind of put our hand on their shoulder and say, we got you. We're going to give you just what we call 4 paragraphs deep. It's what you did, Bob, at MIT. You're not going to learn how to code in Python, but you are going to learn 4 paragraphs deep, such that the bullet that gets Bob, at least he sees coming. And you can make your choice on what you do in terms of a move. We do not want to sit there and say, he didn't see it coming. That's on us if that happens. So our journey into AI was, look, we have stack engineers and front end and back end. And so we're neck deep in the technology. But at the corporate level, at my level, we understand the business opportunity on one side of the river and the tech opportunity on the other, because oftentimes the two do not talk to each other and they don't speak the same language. That's why the soft underbelly of AI today, Bob, is all the Americans who have a Chat GPT account. Care to guess how many use it daily? What do you think the number is?
It's got to be huge. I mean, there's never been a bigger rollout of a technology product in the history of technology than what OpenAI did. So to what degree they use it, I'm not sure.
7% of signed up Chat GPT users use it every day. So what that tells me is, hey, great. I heard my neighbor had it. I heard my neighbor across the street's kids using it to cheat in college. Let me check this out. They might have done a birthday poem for their friend Bob in the voice of Shakespeare, and then they did it in Eminem, the rapper's voice, and they thought that was cute. And a lot of them haven't returned. And so there's a lot of work to be done to get to that kind of second and third layer of you fooled with the copywriting piece. It's fun, but there's a lot more out there. So in a very long answer to your question, we were on top of the launch of OpenAI and have sat sidecar to that since then.
Well, we know that if AI is a loaf of bread, ChatGPT is just a little slice on the end of that loaf, okay? We know that there's a much bigger play here. And at the same time, you want people to be aware, you want them to understand, but there's a lot of risk as well. I mean, are you encouraging people to, hey, look out, here comes change, get ready, embrace it, go offense, go for it. But at the same time, there's a lot of skepticism around using AI, especially in the fields of healthcare, right?
Well, there is. So that's a fact. But this is where this thing is fascinating, Bob. I think a lot of it comes from fear. And look, the older we get, I think when change comes and someone sets change in our lap, we have a response. It's fight or flight. So it's Bob's inner voice is saying, Bob, don't stay here. This is for the kids. You're going to be embarrassed. You don't understand it. You're going to lose your shirt. Run where you're safe. And that's a frontal lobe function of our brain to keep us safe. But that is not a winning strategy going forward. But if you think back to the history of innovation, Bob, this isn't new. Look, I'm reading a book right now about Henry Ford called Wheels of the World. And you would have thought that the world was ending when Ford introduced the mass assembly line to the world. And of course, now we look back in that and say, well, gosh, could he have gotten there earlier, right? So I don't think as humans, we ingest change very well. We certainly don't ingest change when it's rapid. So the question then becomes, how do you win with this? And I think it's he or she wins when they can non-emotionally kind of dissect what's going on, and then decide, hey, is this for me or not? And if you say no, that's fine. But at least you've done the work to say, yeah, why would someone want to rent Bob's second bedroom? Maybe it isn't for me, but maybe it is for younger people who value the convenience and they don't like hotels. Okay. If you do just that, you're now in the mindset game and you're ahead of most of your peers who are traditional executives. Most folks are going to shut it down. I had a post in LinkedIn several weeks ago, Bob, that I called the 6-finger AI problem, meaning early on, the images would every now and then produce a 6th finger. And so many people use that as a finger point gotcha moment, as if to say, hey, it's a sham. I knew it. This makes my cognitive bias seem very real. I had it right. I'm not using it. Well, that's a mistake, right? And so all this is to say, this is much of a human mindset kind of problem than it is about the technology. If you can get your head around the technology, you will win.
Well, I think that's a key point there. You know, people are fearful of job displacement. You know, they think that AI is going to basically take away their job, take away their purpose in life. These things are happening so fast and I'm going to get outpaced. I'll lose track of what's going on. So our mission then is to get people to be aware and to educate them of what those potential capabilities might be. I've heard you mention before some concepts called unholy alliances. Can you break that up a little bit for me?
Yeah, I'm smiling broadly. I know this is an audio podcast, but I'm smiling because not a lot of folks talk about that, but I love talking about it. So unholy alliances, Bob, simply speaks to the fact that there is a hard right turn or a zig to a business's zag that's out there. They just don't know it. The two best examples are as follows. True stories. So when I say the word Guinness to you, Bob, what comes to mind? No filter.
A cold beer right away.
Cold beer in a beautiful glass.
Oh, yeah.
300-year recipe from an English family in the countryside of England. You know, great. Okay. Well, the executives at Guinness had a problem. I think it's in the 1950s, where beer sales were flat to declining. And so they had a retreat and they rented a castle in England. Well, the boys went out for a bird hunt. And the CEO took a shot at a bird and he missed. And as us men are likely to do, Bob, they razzed him. Nice shot, boss, right? To which he said, that's got to be the fastest bird in England. Well, get back to the castle, and they're drinking Guinness, arguing about who the fastest bird in England is. So they wake up the next morning, the CEO looks in the corner and says, man, we drank a lot of Guinness. And then he thought, we drank a lot of Guinness and we were arguing over things that really aren't that important. So net, the Guinness Book of World Records was born.
I'll be darned.
Think about that. What does a 300-year-old family recipe for beer and a paperback book stating who can eat the most pancakes in 60 seconds have to do with one another? The answer is they do not. So you have an unholy alliance. Now, what was the business effect? Well, the business effect was, turns out men like Bob and Henry liked this newfangled book, and we would go to the local pubs to argue over these ridiculous facts, and we would drink beer while we did it. So it was a stimulus for growth. The other great example is Michelin. When I say Michelin, you probably think of the great cartoon character with a big stomach, because it's the tire company.
Oh,
right?
yeah, the roly-poly tire guy.
That's right. They're in the business of vulcanized rubber. They put tires on cars. Well, they had the same problem as Guinness, and they needed to figure out a way to sell more tires. So one of their young executives had the idea, well, why don't we get Ma and Pa back on the road? To which they said, well, great idea, genius. Well, how do we do that? Well, what if we rank the restaurants? And so the Michelin 3-star rating guide was born. Now, again, vulcanized rubber in a plant and a paperback book for the best sushi in downtown Dallas. What does that have to do with one another? Nothing. But that's the point, because the 3-star ratings guide got Ma and Pa out of their community to go drive to these restaurants, these inns, etc. Thereby, the demand for tires goes up. So in this age of AI, where this new technology is now in the laps of everyone, I think these unholy alliances are everywhere, and they're begging for discovery. It's just you got to be creative and dig a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I'm convinced that there's a lot of these potential new opportunities that are being fostered, and we kind of stumble into them. And some are more on purpose. I've been following what Mark Cuban's been doing in the pharmaceutical business, and I know you have a strong background in the pharmaceutical industry as well, Henry. There's a lot of opportunity in healthcare with respect to AI. You refers to at times of unearned margin. Would you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. So Bob, with unearned margin, I think what you have is you have the macro conditions there are, take any industry, and typically that industry has been run the same way for decades by a lot of the same people. And so when you have that, there's a baked in way that they do business. You bring up the PBMs, for example. The role that the PBMs play.
Pharmacy benefit managers?
That is correct.
Okay.
So essentially they're helping to negotiate and ideally make the price of drugs lower for managed healthcare companies and their clients. Well, that's the exact opposite in my mind. And so Cuban saw it like I see it. Can you essentially get to the same destination with a radically different trail map? And so that's what he's doing. And so in the mind of a disruptor, they would see the PBMs and their kind of claim to that market as unearned margin, meaning, can you do it a way that's cheaper and better? Because if the answer is yes, you're going to take the market over. And we've seen a lot of examples of this where you inject new technology with a new business model and boom, you're on the scene. The little subtle shift that Netflix did was they mailed us the entertainment, so we didn't have to drive to the physical Blockbuster. And then they said, Bob, if you and your wife want to keep it as long as you want. There's no late fee. Now, in the world of traditional video entertainment, that was sacrosanct. Late fees were 29% of Blockbuster's operating revenue quarter over quarter. So if you were in that world, Hollywood Video, Blockbuster, name the other video stores, you charged a late fee. Because if you didn't, you were staring margin in the face and giving it back to the customer. And that happens in a habit. I'd say where this is also rife, Bob, banking. all the fees associated with banking right now, we would look at that and say, that's an unearned margin. And Joe Q customer will say, the second somebody shows me a better mousetrap, I'm gone.
That's right.
And so if Instagram decides to get into banking, Diana, your producer, is going to like that because she's young and she wants a double click experience and she's familiar with Instagram. And so Instagram's not going to look at all these fees that a traditional bank. Here's the other thing on unearned margin, Bob. Take Walmart. Walmart has thousands of stores that they have to clean, maintain, light, insure, employ. Amazon doesn't have those same costs. So it sends, that size 6.5 lady's shoe to someone's door this morning in a different way than Walmart does. And so this idea of unearned margin really opens the door for the disruptors because they just look at the sale to the customer quite different.
Well, I tell you what, that's an incredible thing to be noodling on as we look at the whole disruption process, and particularly in the AI. Let's shift our discussion here back to the classroom. Tell us what you're doing at LSU with really bright students.
Yeah, we're really excited about what we've been able to do. And just for the record, Bob, when everyone calls me an adjunct, I always look over my shoulder to see if my dad or my granddad is standing behind me because look, traditional education, that route, that is not me. I don't have my PhD. I'm not cited in research papers. But at the end of the day, I took my disruptive lens to the 4-year secondary education issue, meaning we have kids that are taking loans out today with no guarantees on what that loan will give them. Oh, and by the way, you can't absolve yourself from that debt. So it's sticking with you for the rest of your life. So these are, I think kids are opening their eyes to this. And so this idea that Bob's parents and grandparents were educated really in the same manner that Bob was in college, meaning butt in a seat in a room, a man or a woman up front, giving him information that the person in the seat would regurgitate in the form of a test or a final for a grade, rinse, repeat. Spring semester, fall semester, maybe a little summer, meaning it hadn't changed a bunch, right? So I thought, okay, what if we can bring the topics the kids really want to talk about, and we've done that, AI. What if we also brought executives from real businesses in the community that had problems? We've done that. And then what if we thought there's an opportunity for those talented young people to network with these people such that if they do good work, they're going to call them for a job. And we've done that. So we've really kind of disrupted the traditional secondary education model at LSU. And I'm proud of my alma mater for doing that. The provost there, his name is Dr. Roy Haggerty, extremely forward-thinking, isn't averse to taking risks, and it's paid off. We're going to start the class back again in the fall. There's news that I can't share just yet, but it's coming that we're continuing to push the needle because, again, it's the perfect microcosm. I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Who's coming to solve the problem of businesses in Baton Rouge? Is McKinsey? Is the Boston Consulting Group? Bain? All the Accenture? No, they're not coming here. And so my thought was the 4-year secondary institution of learning, SMU, where you are in Dallas, UT Dallas, where you worked, Bob. Those are the folks who should be poised to do it. Now, the clock is ticking on them because if they don't solve the problem, someone else is going to do it for them. The Khan Academies of the world, that's what I call snow melting at the edges, where you might think it's a cute and a head tap until they take the margin of the incumbents and it's not so cute anymore. So we've been able to do this. The students love it. The private kind of sponsors in our community love it. And we're learning. We're learning and changing it as we go. So it's been a delight to be a part of that project.
Oh, we have a similar situation at University of Texas, Dallas. They have a UT design group, and it's the capstone for the seniors in engineering. And it's all across the different disciplines of engineering. And they reach out to the community and they end up with usually 150 or so corporate sponsors to innovate and work with these students to come up with new solutions. And I'm actually sponsoring a project right now, and I'm working with 5 young, very smart design engineers, and they are teaching me so much stuff. It's just unbelievable. They have experiences with some of this technology, that I had no clue was even out there. And I thought I had a clue what was out there. So it's just refreshing to see how they embrace this and they deal with this. So we're both benefiting from being taught by those who are much younger than us, Henry. So
Well,
that
and
in
Bob,
itself
let
is
me, I'm glad you mentioned it because let me close that loop for you.
okay.
What they don't have, okay? They do not have the roads and the laps that you and I have run. Meaning, listen, here's the home run with this technology. And everyone asked me in my class, well, Henry, do you tell your kids to use ChatGPT? I say, yes, I do. However, I tell them, when you're sitting across from me or Bob or anyone else making a hiring decision, ChatGPT is not going to save you. So that means you have to be well-rounded. You have to work on the soft skills with the new technology. That is the home run. Meaning, this idea of mentorship both ways has never been kind of more important, meaning Bob can learn from these young folks, but they can learn from Bob because with that charm, that firm handshake, that eye contact, the handwritten note, all the little things that have made up your career and to be really successful and have people gravitate to you, these folks do not have that. And they need it. So the ones that can make that gumbo recipe down here in my South Louisiana living work, though, that is a grand slam home run.
So my mother-in-law will be 99 next month, and she's a Cajun. And so I know all about that gumbo and making a good roux. So you're making me hungry at lunchtime almost. Hey, let me say this. I think it's really important. The highlight message here, as you advocate for people to embrace this technology and to learn and to be fluent with what the changes are taking place, you're really doing that to serve your customer. I think that's the bottom line, right? So serving the customer, how do you tell someone that they're being successful? What are the 2 or 3 things you could tell them to think about in serving your customer going forward?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Bob, because look, when people feel like they're lost in the woods with this technology, I would say this, put that aside and just ask yourself, are you serving the customer better? That's it. And look, guess what that leads to? Most folks don't have what I'm about to mention. This is a great time to put together in any size you want, what I call your customer advisory board. Meaning, look, most businesses spin the door, Bob, of trying to find the next. The next is probably right under our nose. It's probably a person that we've done business with and or served. We just haven't taken the time to foster and grow that relationship. So at the end of the day, if you have questions about your AI strategy, how you're going to use it, what to do, ask your customers. They're going to tell you. Did they like the fact that we could walk 20 feet to the mailbox to get the DVD? Yes. And then they liked the fact that Bob could push a button on his remote, didn't even have to walk to his mailbox, right? That's a customer benefit. It's when we take our eyes off the customer and worry about things that aren't bottom line to their reality that we lose. So good old-fashioned, simplistic, go back to your customer and ask her. She will tell you. And by the way, what an awesome feedback loop that becomes, right? I think too many businesses these days have lost sight of who they're really serving. And I don't think that's a malicious thought. I think it's just they get caught up in other pieces of the business and it gets dropped by the wayside. That is not a good strategy. Now, here's the good news. Guess what can help with that? Artificial intelligence. You can design really cool ways to get customer feedback much more quickly using AI and machine learning than you can through humans. And we've actually done that. We've done a project like that at DisruptReady. So I would say when in doubt, ask your customer.
Yeah, I think just not asking your customer now, but who's your future customer as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, Henry Ford, one of my mentors, was fond of saying, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So you do have to have some design thinking on what you ask your customer. And I love the way you put that, Bob, always future thinking. But too many companies miss that opportunity.
Well, this has been a good conversation, Henry. I'm so glad that we're able to pull up talking about The business of AI in healthcare is a long, long discussion. We look forward to having you back again, but today we've had the opportunity to listen to Henry Hayes, CEO and co-founder of DisruptReady. Thank you, Henry, for your time today. We really value that.
Babalu, I can't wait to the next one.